Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another tasting with Charlotte and Craig.
Cheers.
Yes, everybody. Cheers. I'll be my usual distracted self as I read the chats as well. So today we were doing Chenin Blanc, and Craig and I purposely picked different styles of Chenin Blanc because, that's we try to give you a different, view on the wines that we're looking at, kind of from different styles that we're having. Chenin Blanc is mainly originally from the Loire Valley in France. It's grown in a couple other areas like South Africa and California, which is fun, but those were typically known for like bulk mass producing grapes because Chenin is a really vigorous grapevine. Like it wants to grow and it takes over and it like creates a ton of fruit per acreage. So a lot of people who give you quality Chenin do like hand picking and they do cropping down. And again, if you're looking at things like older vines, they just inherently produce less fruit. So that fruit is going to be poor quality, like fine wine and like people. We grow with age and get better. So in that terms of thing, I picked a South African wine and Craig is drinking France Chenin Blanc. So he'll get to talk about that. And I'm a little like, I want to be able to like have you go into it real detail on the flavors of it because I want to like picture myself drinking that one as well. Do you want to start, Craig?
Sure. Welcome, everyone. Chenin Blanc, I'm going to talk about it a little bit from kind of my experience from sommelier training, but also my personal love for the grape. It's one of those grapes that when I first started my official wine education, before that I was just self-taught like everyone through reading magazines and drinking wine from the liquor store when I lived in Ontario. But when I took the sommelier program in '99 in Halifax, it was one of the grapes that was really opened up to me that I wasn't that aware of. It's, I didn't know, I mean, I had probably had it a few times, but I didn't know the range and exciting styles and flavors and complexity and ageability of this grape, particularly from the Loire. So that's when I got into it. And whenever anybody asks me about Chenin or I do a tasting that has one, we usually just call it Chenin, even though it's Chenin Blanc, everybody just says Chenin. And because there's no Chenin Rouge that I know of, or Noir. But the way I describe it to people is that it's kind of like, a bit like Sauvignon Blanc, but it's sort of in between Sauvignon Blanc and Riesling. In that it comes from the same parent grape as Sauvignon. They both had Sauvignon, which is one of these ancient vinifera grapes, as one of their parents. I don't think they know what the other grape was in the cross, but Chenin has that freshness, can have the citrus, green apple, and minerality that you sometimes get in Sauvignon, but it doesn't have that pungent gooseberry, cat pee, whatever you want to call it. So from a acid and fruitiness standpoint, it's somewhat more like Riesling. And also it's a lot like Riesling in that it has great acidity and makes great dessert wines, which you don't really say for Sauvignon Blanc. You rarely see it. But Chenin Blanc can make top dessert wines, just like Riesling. And it's also very interesting in that it, like Riesling and like the Semillon that's in Sauternes, the other great dessert wine of France, it develops the noble rot in the vineyard. And when I'm tasting this wine, I'll show you a couple pictures of that. But that is something that only certain grapes can get through and still produce a good quality wine. So Chenin does everything from dry to off dry to very quite sweet, even in a glass that you would have with your food, like certain Vouvrays. But then it also makes these extreme dessert wines, like the one I'm having, the Moulin Touché, also Courte de Chaume, and there are some other famous ones that are really special. So my love of it came from really learning from my instructor, Adam Dial, who kind of opened my eyes to Chenin. And I've been to South Africa and tasted gazillions of their, from their regular ones up to now the trend there is oak aged. I think somebody was saying they had the Bellingham, and also there was a Netterberg at the AMBL, but I think I've drunk most of it. I don't know if there's much left in the province, but that's a real trend, is oak aged Chenin Blanc, which is another beautiful, interesting, delicious thing. So I think Chenin is right up there with Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and Riesling as the top. Maybe you could add Pinot Gris into that, you know, that top white grapes in the world. So that's how I feel about it. How about you, Charlotte?
I agree. I've been sending passwords out to people. I was listening, but I muted my microphone in case you could hear me typing away.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so I think we got everybody that was in the waiting room. Okay, excellent. So yeah, I really enjoy Chenin. I think it's a great wine. It's versatile. But as much as I appreciate the ones that are like the sweeter style, I really do like the crisp style ones as well. So when I'm picking up one, I typically will go for things from South Africa. Today, I saw a couple people post which ones that they were drinking, and I have a matching one. I have the Bellingham from South Africa that I'm drinking today. Other people, I think, have some wild olive, which is also a good one. And I know, Craig, you had said that there's, what is it, Ned,
Netterberg, yeah.
which is also a good one. I think it's on its way out, so it's harder to find right now. Okay, so some people are drinking ones from Niagara as well, from Big Head Winery.
Oh, yes.
And some had wild olive for their picnic lunch.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't mention Canada in my talking about Chenin, but Quailsgate is the only Canadian winery, Quailsgate in the Okanagan, that really made their reputation on Chenin Blanc. And we've had it at AMBL, but I wish they'd bring it back to GL because it's always really good. And they do a reserve version too. So Chenin does work in Canada.
Excellent. So we have a couple that are drinking the wild olive, some that are drinking the Bellingham, some are drinking the French Valley Loire Saumur. So that's also
Oh,
nice.
I
And
love that
people
Saumur.
just have whatever wine that they have, which is also awesome.
Yeah, that Saumur is, I think, one of the best value whites at the ANBL right now. It's interesting, and it definitely has the Chenin taste. When we learned about Chenin in university, it was at a university in the sommelier program. One thing they talked about that Chenin sometimes has is this kind of a wet wool or wet dog note and that's not a negative thing. Some of you are dog lovers and you know what a wet dog smells like. Or wet wool, like wet mittens from the winter. So it's kind of a minerally, it's a little bit earthy kind of thing, but I find that I really only pick that up in the French ones, particularly the old fashioned ones, like more premium ones. I don't think it's a big deal. In South Africa, I find they're really clean.
Yeah. And I just grabbed this from downstairs in my thing because I also have a sparkling version as well, which is not what I'm going to drink today. I just brought it up so that the cool thing about Chenin is it can make all of these different styles of wine. So it's, again, really versatile. And you just, because you had one and you didn't like it, doesn't mean you don't like it. Like, try other styles, try other brands, all of those. And I'm just still letting people into the waiting room. Good day. But in terms of the Bellingham, this one is, I find interesting because it's exactly like what I'm looking for. It's coming from old vines. They're hand picking it, but they're picking it in whole bunches. And so with that, again, with any maceration, you have to be really careful. So they're doing like that quick press because they're doing it in whole clusters. They don't want to get all that bitter phenolics from the stems and the seeds to really play a role in that. So they're really doing that quick press, getting the juices. They're doing that cold fermentation. Um, and then they're aging this one particularly in some old French barrels. So they're doing like second and third fill from what I can tell from their winery. The winery itself is known for producing Chenin Blanc. They have different levels. This one would probably be just like kind of their, like, not base, but it's a little bit. Right now in the stores at AMBL, if you can find it, it's like $20 a bottle, which is kind of nice. It's not going to break your pocketbook, but it's got this beautiful like straw color to it, which I like looking at the different colors of wine. And when you're studying, and if you're doing it through WSET, sometimes you have to describe the color of wine. And it can be kind of hard because you're like, well, what do you call yellow? And what do you call pale? And what do you call medium? And so it really takes drinking so many different ones to really be like, oh, that's light. But it can also just be, is it three wines lined up and is one darker than the other? You can go from that versus if you're just looking at it. But this one, it's like, I don't actually, you probably can't tell from there, but it is really a nice straw color. Like, it's, I wouldn't say gold. It doesn't have any of those brown hues to it. It's not highly aromatic in my opinion. Like, I have to kind of get right down in there to smell it. But the things that I'm smelling, when I first opened it, there was some definite funk to it, but that's all evaporated off now and gone. But it's mainly stone fruit is what I'm getting. And like, when I smell like orange mixed with stone fruit, I immediately think marmalade, like Graham's homemade marmalade, and you open it up and be like, is that what I'm supposed to be eating? How do I eat it? With a spoon? Do I put it on toast? I'm not sure. And so for me, when I smell those marmalades, it just brings back like memories. And so because of that, I can add other flavors that I'm like, oh, well, when I smell this, is like, is there a honey note there? Is there like a riper note? So I start looking for those when it triggers a memory of something that I used to like smell. Admitting more people.
No, that's interesting. You mentioned honey because that's when you look in textbooks for Chenin, the things you see mainly are kind of apple and honey. And particularly when you get into these botrytis ones, like the one that I'm tasting, the sweeter ones, you get more honey. And it doesn't necessarily mean a honey sweetness, but that honey flavor. You can still have that dry wine that has a honey note to it. And I do think that musty or funk or whatever you're smelling is probably, you have a chemistry background, but it's probably related chemically to whatever gives that wet wool, wet dog thing. So it's probably the same.
Yeah, and I had mentioned, like, I do wine reviews on my YouTube channel. Craig is doing things like this as well. And I try to record every wine I'm drinking now and post it out every Friday so far, but it might become more often. And this one in particular, like when I described it on my video, I was like, there's like this funk there that's, so it's not bad. But to me, it's like inherently when I smell certain things, I'm like, oh, that could be from this region. What else would make me think it's there? And I can't explain why. There's just something like when I smell, I'm like, oh, maybe that's from this area. But this one, again, it has like those ripe stone fruit notes to it, but kind of marmalade. There's definitely, I'm going to agree with Stephen. I saw one of his chat things come up of dried apricot for sure. And then I get like this kind of minerally note to it as well. But this wine also, it's not, even though it's crisp, it's not a light wine. This is definitely on the medium side. And the flavor, it backs it up. Like, get those little monsters of and apricot and orange and those little like not floral, but like that minerally notes to it. I'm gonna have to give you control on the chats. They're distracting.
You have to mute Ken.
To the side.
I think you have to mute Ken there. His screen keeps coming up.
Oh.
I don't know what happened. I can't see me.
No, I can't see you either. I did see you a quick minute.
There's a button in the left corner for turning your video on, I think.
Good. I'm muting you. Nice for you to join us, though, Ken.
Do you want me to do mine now?
Yes, please.
Your wine, that's a great description of that Bellingham. I think that's a really good wine. I do love that style, that old, like you say, using old oak to make the body fuller and make a bigger wine, but not getting all the vanilla and everything you get in a over oaked white. So what I'm having is a fairly famous French dessert wine called Moulin Touché. It's the 2002, which is the current, it's on the shelves at AMBL right now. It's a premium wine. I don't generally buy wines that are $60, but this is pretty special. It's almost 20 years old, and my wife likes dessert wines too, so we'll enjoy it tonight with something after supper. But it's very famous. There's several appellations in the Loire that are strictly dessert wine. Cote de Chaume is probably the most famous one, but this is also very famous. It's from Coteau de Léon. So I mentioned before about botrytis. So I'm going to put up a picture in a second, but botrytis is a noble rot. It's like grapes can rot and can ruin grapes and lose a vineyard a lot of money. But in areas where it's sort of a controlled rot and the grapes can handle it, you can read a lot more on it. I'm not going into the details, but what ends up happening is that they look ugly, but you can press them and make an amazing dessert wine that has this flavor and aroma that I can only describe as botrytis. So when I'm smelling this wine, and when I opened the bottle, I went, oh yeah, because they claim this one they do, just like in Sauternes, they do repeated pickings in the vineyard where they go in and look for more botrytis grapes. So this is a wine that insists on having botrytis. And what it does is it gives the wine a distinct aroma and flavor that is only associated with botrytis. You could say it's something like honey, but it's not the same. I mean, there's honey, I think, there, but then the botrytis is something else, and it's not floral, it's not really spicy, it's botrytis. And it, in combination with the fruity and the honey and other things, it's a really amazing aromatic. Now, you get it sometimes in regular wines too, that like on regular table wine, particularly from Alsace, from some vintages. Some wineries they let those grapes end up in the wine. Some wineries pick them out, like pick around them, don't use them, because they really do change. If you're trying to make a really clean, simple white wine, and you've got 5% botrytis, all it smells like is botrytis. So if you want to know what botrytis tastes like, you have to taste a botrytis wine. I can't really describe it to you other than it's complex, kind of honey-like, but even more interesting than that. Now, if you look at the wine, this is almost 20 years old. So these wines can age forever, and this isn't even a good vintage. I looked at the winery's website. 2002 is what they call a petit millésime, so a light vintage. But here it is 18 years later, and it's hardly aged at all. Like, this wine tastes like a new wine. It's crazy. 100% Chenin Blanc, and yeah, crazy. When they make this wine, they put it in the bottle and then age 10 years before any of it will be sold. 10 years bottle aging in the cellar before they will sell it. That's not very common.
Show them the bottle, like in the bottom.
Oh yeah, there's wine diamonds in there, which is not really that surprising. But
if you
other
get a
than that,
wine and you see that's not a bad thing.
no, it means it's not been heavily filtered and racked a million times, because you can get rid of those and by chilling a wine and then filtering it, like racking it off. But every time you rack a white wine, you oxidize it slightly, you use aromatics and fruitiness. So you really shouldn't do it. I'm just going to put a picture of some botrytis grapes up if this share screen thing works, and then we let people talk about if I can find it here. Sometimes they
Well, what are wine diamonds? That's a great question. That's the precipitation of tartaric acid coming out in your wine. And it typically happens when they're sweet wines and not overly filtered, like Craig was saying.
Yeah. I mean, certain wines will form them more than others for various reasons, I guess. But it's just salt. It's basically, I think it's potassium tartrate. So it's the tartaric acid that is forming.
And there's a couple of the Côte de Leons available at AMBL. They do carry a heavier price point right now. They're in like usually the $50 to $70 price point range. And some of them, the Beauchemard, I think, has two different styles on right now. One's like kind of sweet, and the other one's like sweet, like highly botrytis. And it definitely has some wine diamonds in it. And that one in particular has like a picture of a peacock on the label, if I'm remembering correctly.
My share doesn't seem to be working. Oh well, it worked well last time. I'm not sure what's going on. It only wants me to share things that I don't want to show.
I think it's working now.
Oh, it is. Okay, I just need to put the right one up. There it is.
My screen
All right.
went Willy.
Can you see them?
I can.
There's a bunch of different pictures of botrytis grapes.
Now, there's
So you can
one
see,
over here that has like the gray mold of the grape, but you can see like some of them are botrytis, but then there's like the green grapes on there too. And that's why what Craig was saying is they do those multiple pass through.
yeah, multiple tree. They call them tree or tries. Like, well, they'll go out, and the top wineries in Sauternes, I know they might go out more than 5 to 10 times to make sure that they get everything because it's worth so much money.
And in with those, some of the grape wineries, because this grape will grow vigorous and have like a lot of different things. So I did just get a notice that we have been capped. Our free like extensions have been run out.
Yeah.
So we will kind of bring it in. But in terms of that, they can go out and they can collect the grapes that can make the different styles of wine, and then they can do the other passes. And then if they have a section or a parcel that's getting the botrytis, they can let that go and keep those grapes for the decadent sweet wines that we're getting.
Somebody asked.
If you can click on the same link, it doesn't. I haven't found that really works. And then the one question we have is, do we find botrytis in German Riesling, Craig?
Absolutely. I mean, that's when you go through your hierarchy of German wines, the top ones are the TBAs, the Trockenbeerenauslesen, which Trockenbeerenauslesen means selected botrytis berries, basically. So Beerenauslesen would be a lower, and then Trockenbeerenauslesen would be the highest level, and so that would be quite often. I mean, but it doesn't necessarily mean I don't think 100% botrytis. I could be wrong on that, but.
And then you can also get Tokai, which
yes,
is the same name, from Hungary. We do have another question: are all Chenin Blancs high in acid? It's kind of one of those things, like the grape is known for having a high acid, and being able to make a sweet wine that's sweet but not like cloying, you do still need to have that acid present to balance that out.
Yeah, I would say relatively speaking, they are all high acid, meaning if you grew Chenin Blanc next to, say, Gewürztraminer, it wouldn't matter where you grew it or how ripe it got, it would always be higher in acid than the Gewürz. It's just some grapes are low, like Gewürz, and some are high, whether it's black grapes or white grapes. Somebody asked a question here. They're familiar with botrytis or Cineraria as a fungus and can recall the smell. Is the taste similar to the smell? I don't find that botrytis wine smells moldy. There's nothing unpleasant about botrytis in the aromatics and taste. So the only time you would say it was negative is if you were trying to make something that had no botrytis. And then you go, oh, there's a hint of botrytis in there. We can't use this in wine X. If we're making a dessert wine, maybe we'll use it there. So it doesn't smell moldy now.
My favorite pairing with botrytis wine is creme brulee. Just That's what I want to have with it, like all the time. Is like equivalent.
It is
But
delicious.
we have about 5 more minutes, and I know a couple people are drinking wild olive on here, which is also, I may have had a bottle of that last night. And so I also, oh, and Craig, you had it today at the picnic as well. So, but that one I find is much more crisp. It has like those green fruit notes to it more so than even what I'm getting on this Bellingham one, which is going in more in the stone fruit side.
Mm-hmm. Want to let somebody take a crack at describing?
Somebody got a porch bomb from their friend Ken. Way to go, Ken! Delivering wild olive.
Somebody's drinking the Big Head. Can you unmute them and let them just explain it? Oh, it's Vincent.
Yeah, how's it going? I picked this up when I was in the winery a few weeks ago. It's a little bit off dry, high in acid. There's a bit of a texture to it, which I like. Overall, it's a pretty good wine. A little bit sweeter than I would normally drink, but it's something that I was in my cellar for a little while, and I was quite happy to open it up.
What's the vintage then?
Let me check. It's the raw. It's 2017.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So with about 5 minutes, and we don't like it when it just like shuts us right off mid-sentence. Thank you everybody for coming, joining us on a quick wine tasting. And I hope that we are gonna try, I think, to continue to do these on Saturdays. So send us a note if you want back in on the meeting, and we'll get you the password, because we do just send it out to the people close to the date, because there's been all the articles about Zoom being hacked and that kind of thing. We don't want people to get hacked.
And everybody should change their password if they hadn't changed it
This week.
in the last couple of weeks or so, yeah.
It was short, I'm sorry. Excellent. So I think I'm gonna say thank you so much for coming. Make sure you drink more wine.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.